Welcome back. If you're new to our channel, we dive deep into history's most gripping and emotional stories. Tonight, we shine a light on an inspiring tale from World War I, the story of the Lost Battalion in the Argonne Forest. Amidst the chaos of battle, this unit's incredible bravery became a beacon of hope. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy these stories and want to hear more about history's unsung heroes. Let's dive into the remarkable saga of the Lost Battalion and their inspiring stand in the Argonne Forest. It was the fall of 1918, and the war that was supposed to end all wars had dragged on for 4 long, grueling years. The men who fought in the trenches had seen things that no one should ever see, things that haunted them in the dead of night when the gunfire finally fell silent. But there was one story that stood out, one tale that has been told and retold by those who were there, those who somehow lived to see the end. This is the story of the Lost Battalion. It was October, and the Meuse-Argonne offensive was in full swing. The Allies were pushing hard to break through the German lines and bring an end to the war. In the thick, dense woods of the Argonne Forest, Major Charles Whittlesey and his battalion were tasked with a nearly impossible mission: to advance deep into enemy territory, cut off the Germans, and hold their position until reinforcements could arrive. The forest was a nightmare. The trees stood tall and dark, their branches intertwining overhead to block out the sun, casting everything in an eerie twilight. The ground was thick with mud, and every step felt like a battle in itself. The air was heavy with the scent of decaying leaves, gunpowder, and something else, something that sent a chill down the spine of every man who walked through those woods. Major Whittlesey was a stoic man, a lawyer by trade before the war. He was the kind of leader who inspired confidence in his men, not through grand speeches, but through quiet determination. He knew the risks of their mission, knew that they were walking into the lion's den, but he also knew that there was no turning back. "Stay close and keep your heads down," Whittlesey ordered, his voice calm but firm as his men moved through the underbrush. "We're deep in enemy territory now. We hold our position until we get the signal to advance." The battalion, nearly 600 men strong, moved quietly through the forest, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. The tension was palpable, a living thing that hung over them like a shroud. They reached their objective, a narrow ravine that cut through the forest and dug in. It wasn't much, a small rise of land that offered little in the way of protection, but it would have to do. The men set up their machine guns, checked their rifles, and waited. Hours passed, and the woods around them remained eerily silent. There was no sign of the enemy, but Whittlesey knew they were out there, just beyond the trees, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Do you think they know we're here?" one of the men asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They know," Whittlesey replied, his eyes scanning the tree line, "and they're waiting." The first attack came just before dawn. The Germans, hidden in the trees, opened fire with everything they had: rifles, machine guns, mortars. The air was filled with the deafening roar of gunfire and the screams of the wounded. The ground shook with the impact of shells, and the trees around them splintered and fell, turning the forest into a twisted maze of destruction. "Hold your positions!" Whittlesey shouted over the noise, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos. "Don't let them break through!" The men fought with everything they had, returning fire with grim determination. But the Germans were relentless, pressing the attack from all sides. Whittlesey's battalion was cut off from the rest of the Allied forces, surrounded on all sides with no way out. For days, they held their ground, repelling wave after wave of German attacks. The forest became a living hell, shells exploding all around them, the ground turning to mud and blood, the cries of the wounded echoing through the trees. Food and water ran low, and the men, exhausted and battered, began to lose hope. "Major, we can't hold them much longer," Lieutenant Leakey said, his face pale and drawn. "We're almost out of ammo, and the men are starving." Whittlesey looked around at his men, at their hollow eyes and sunken faces, and he knew they were at their breaking point. But surrender was not an option. "We hold," Whittlesey said firmly. "Reinforcements will come. We just have to hold." But the days dragged on and no reinforcements came. The situation grew more desperate with each passing hour. The men were reduced to drinking from mud-filled puddles, and the dead were piled up around them, their bodies a macabre barricade against the German onslaught. Then, in the midst of this nightmare, something unexpected happened. A carrier pigeon, the last of the birds they had, was sent out with a message, a desperate plea for help. The pigeon, named Cher Ami, flew through the hail of bullets and shrapnel, its tiny wings beating frantically as it soared above the battlefield. But the Germans saw the pigeon and opened fire. Cher Ami was hit, a bullet tearing through its breast, shattering its leg. The little bird faltered, its flight unsteady, but it didn't stop. It kept flying, carrying that message through miles of enemy territory until finally it reached the Allied lines. The message was simple. "We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it!" That message saved the lives of the remaining men in the Lost Battalion. The artillery stopped, and soon after, reinforcements arrived. Of the nearly 600 men who had gone into the Argonne Forest, only about 200 walked out. The rest were killed, wounded, or missing. As the surviving men were led back to safety, they passed through the ravaged forest, the ground littered with the debris of war. The trees, once towering and proud, were reduced to splintered stumps. The air was thick with smoke, and the sun was just beginning to set, casting an eerie orange glow over the battlefield. Lieutenant Leakey, his arm in a makeshift sling, looked at Whittlesey as they walked. "Major, how did we make it out of there?" Whittlesey, his face gaunt and lined with exhaustion, shook his head. "I don't know, Lieutenant, but we did." In the days that followed, the story of the Lost Battalion spread throughout the Allied forces and beyond. They were hailed as heroes, their bravery and determination in the face of impossible odds inspiring countless others. But for the men who had lived through it, there was no glory, no sense of triumph. There was only the memory of those dark, blood-soaked days in the Argonne Forest, and the knowledge that they had survived something that should have been their end. Major Charles Whittlesey, the quiet lawyer-turned-soldier who had led his men through that hell, returned home a changed man. He rarely spoke of what happened in the Argonne, carrying the burden of those days with him for the rest of his life. And Cher Ami, the pigeon who had flown through a storm of bullets to save them, became a symbol of hope and perseverance. The bird was awarded the French Croix de Guerre for its bravery, and its body was preserved and displayed in the Smithsonian Institution, a reminder of the incredible story of the Lost Battalion. The story of the Lost Battalion is one of the many untold tales of World War I, a testament to the courage, sacrifice, and resilience of the men who fought in that terrible conflict. It's a story that deserves to be remembered, not just as a piece of history, but as a lesson in the strength of the human spirit. If this story of courage and survival resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales from history. There are countless stories of bravery, sacrifice, and endurance that we're eager to share with you.